The crowd went quiet. The cameras were rolling. The whole world was watching the drama unfold. "Check the scanner again, buddy," Eleanor said, her voice deadly calm, "because Teddy has a surprise for you." Teddy trotted forward and dropped a small hidden microcamera he had been wearing on his collar all night. It had recorded the judge himself pouring the sedative into the barrels at 3 a.m. "We caught you in 4K, Eleanor smirked. "Your move, traitor." The private jet Isabella Vance provided was straight-up luxury. Eleanor was kicked back in a leather recliner, sipping a sparkling cider that cost more than her first truck, while Teddy had his own seat, snacking on premium Wagyu beef treats. Cyclone was safely tucked in the pressurized cargo hold, probably dreaming of the $10 million trophy currently sitting in Eleanor's lap. "We did it, Teddy," Eleanor whispered, looking out the window at the clouds. "The ranch is saved. No more leaking roofs, no more broken fences, and definitely no more Sterlings." But as the plane descended toward their local airstrip, Eleanor noticed something sketchy. From 5,000 feet up, she could see a fleet of black SUVs parked around the entrance to the Silver Ranch. There were orange construction cones everywhere, and a massive yellow crane was already hovering over her main stable. "Wait a minute, Jax. Get on the radio," Eleanor barked, her vibes instantly turning from celebratory to combat-ready. As soon as the plane touched down, Eleanor didn't wait for the stairs. She jumped out the side door, her boots hitting the tarmac with a thud that meant business. She loaded Cyclone into the trailer in record time and hauled tail toward the ranch. When she pulled up to her front gate, she found a massive steel chain wrapped around the posts. A sigh was bolted to the wood. "Property seized. Eminent domain. Project New Horizon." "You gotta be kidding me," Eleanor hissed, her blood hitting boiling point. A man in a sharp gray suit, not a Sterling, but someone even more soulless, stepped out from behind a security detail. He was holding a tablet and looking at Eleanor like she was a glitch in his system. "Mrs. Eleanor, I'm Marcus Thorne, CEO of Thorne Global Infrastructure," he said, his voice as cold as a freezer. "While you were away, playing in the sand, the county council passed an emergency decree. This land has been designated as a critical tech hub. Your ownership has been revoked. You have 1 hour to clear your personal items." "Revoked? You are tripping if you think I'm leaving," Eleanor shouted, stepping out of her truck with Teddy growling at her heels. "I have the deed. I have the clout of a world champion. And I have $10 million to pay every tax and fine you can throw at me." Thorne smirked. "A pure villain move. Money doesn't matter when the law says the land belongs to the future. Your ranch is obsolete, Eleanor. It's been deprecated. And that horse? He's a public safety hazard. We have a court order to relocate him to a government facility for study." "Over my dead body," Eleanor said, her hand going to the latch of the trailer. Suddenly, the crane began to move. It wasn't just there for construction. It was carrying a massive electromagnetic net. They weren't just taking the land. They were trying to capture Cyclone like he was some kind of sci-fi experiment. "Teddy, distraction protocol," Eleanor yelled. Teddy took off like a missile, weaving between the security guards' legs and tripping them up with elite precision. While the guards were shook and trying to catch the dog, Eleanor slammed the trailer door open. "Cyclone, full send." The stallion burst out of the trailer like a black lightning bolt. He charged straight toward Marcus Thorne's SUV, his hooves crushing the hood of the expensive car like it was a soda can. "He's insane. Neutralize him!" Thorne screamed, diving for cover. But Eleanor was already in motion. She grabbed a heavy-duty bolt cutter from her truck, the same one Teddy had found at the Sterling site, and snapped the chain on her own front gate. "Jax, Get the other horses out of the back pasture. We're going to the Hidden Valley, Eleanor commanded. Hidden Valley was a patch of land deep in the mountains that wasn't on any modern map. It was off the grid and protected by ancient rock formations. It was the only place where the law couldn't follow. As the sun began to set, Eleanor, Jax, Teddy, and a dozen horses were speed running through the forest trails, with Thorn's drones buzzing overhead like angry hornets. "They're pinging our location, Elle," Jax yelled, looking at his phone. "They've got thermal scanners. We're exposed." "Not for long," Eleanor said. She pulled out a small vintage remote from her pocket, something Silas had left in the safe years ago. Silas always said the Silver Ranch had a failsafe. She hit a button, and a series of old, hidden smoke emitters along the trail began to hiss, filling the forest with a thick, metallic fog that completely blinded the drone's thermal sensors. The drones started glitching and crashing into the trees like flies hitting a window. "Total blackout," Eleanor smirked. They reached the entrance to the Hidden Valley, a narrow cave passage hidden behind a waterfall. Once inside, they were in a paradise that time had forgotten. It was lush, green, and completely secure. "We're safe for now, Teddy," Eleanor said, sliding off Cyclone's back. "But Thorn isn't going to stop. He wants the horse, and he wants the land." She opened her laptop, the one Isabella had given her, and saw a breaking news alert. Thorn Global had just announced that the Silver Ranch stallion was a biological anomaly and was being hunted as a threat to national security. "They're gaslighting the whole country, Teddy," Eleanor whispered, her eyes turning into steel. "They're trying to turn our hero into a villain so they can steal him." She looked at the $10 million trophy sitting in the dirt. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the truth. "Jax, get the satellite link ready," Eleanor said. "If they want a war, we'll give them a spectacle. We're going to live stream the truth from the heart of the mountain. It's time to leak Thorn Global's real agenda." Just then, a low thrumming sound echoed through the cave. It was a military-grade helicopter. "They found us," Jax gasped. "How did they track us through the fog?" Eleanor looked at Cyclone. The horse was staring at a small, glowing microchip embedded in the trophy she had won in the desert. The trophy, Eleanor realized, her heart dropping. The whole race was a setup to plant a tracker on us. We didn't win a prize. We won a GPS bug. Thorn's voice boomed from the helicopter's speakers, vibrating the cave walls. "Give us the horse, Eleanor. You're out of moves. This is the end of the line." The Hidden Valley wasn't feeling so hidden anymore. The roar of the Thorn Global helicopter was shredding the peaceful vibe of the cavern, and the heavy-duty floodlights from above were cutting through the waterfall like laser beams. Marcus Thorn's voice, amplified by a 1,000-watt speaker, was bouncing off the ancient rock walls. "Eleanor, the trophy has been pinging your coordinates since you left the desert. You're boxed in. Hand over the stallion, and we'll let you and the dog walk." Eleanor looked at the $10 million trophy sitting in the dirt. The gold was glowing with a faint, pulsing blue light. The hidden tracker was snitching on them every millisecond. "They baited us, Teddy," Eleanor hissed, her eyes turning into icy slits. The whole race, the prize, the glory, it was all a scheme to get a GPS bug into our inner circle. Jax was shaking like a leaf, clutching his laptop. "Elle, they've got thermal breaching charges on the roof of the cave. If they pop those, the whole ceiling is going to collapse on the horses. We're cooked." "Not on my watch," Eleanor said, her main character energy hitting 100%. She looked at the back of the cave, where a series of ancient, rusted iron pipes were sticking out of the rock, remnants of an old mining operation Silas had mentioned in his journals. Silas always said this mountain had a pressure cooker heart. "Jax, is the satellite link live?" "And we are live," Eleanor shouted. On every screen from New York to Tokyo, a grainy but clear video of Big L appeared. She was standing in the middle of the cave, holding the snitch trophy. "Listen up, world," Eleanor shouted into the camera. Thorn Global Infrastructure isn't building a tech hub. They're hunting a living, breathing animal to use as a strong bio-prototype strong for their new drone AI. They rigged an international race just to track us down. If I disappear tonight, Marcus Thorn is the one who deleted. The internet went strong nuclear. Comments were flying at warp speed. Hashtag Save the Silver Ranch and hashtag Cyclone Goats started trending worldwide. Marcus Thorn, watching the stream from this chopper, looked mad-pressed. "Breach the cave now," Thorn screamed into his headset. Boom! The first charge went off, sending a shower of dust and rock down. Cyclone let out a soul-shaking neigh and reared up, his hooves striking the cave floor with enough force to make the ground vibrate. "Teddy, pressure valve, now," Eleanor commanded. Teddy took off toward the back of the cave. He didn't need a map. He could smell the ancient sulfur and steam trapped behind the iron pipes. He found a massive rusted lever and grabbed it with his teeth, pulling with every ounce of his GOAT strength. Hiss SS. A massive controlled blast of superheated steam erupted from the mountain, shooting straight up through the breach in the cave roof. It wasn't just smoke. It was a geyser of white vapor that completely blacked out the helicopter's sensors and sent it spinning wildly into the night sky. "The pilot's blinded. They're aborting," Jax cheered, watching the chopper disappear into the mist. But the danger wasn't over. A ground team of Thorn's try-hard security guards was already rappelling down the waterfall, their tactical gear glistening in the dark. They were holding high-tech capture nets that looked like they were made of electric wire. "They really want to scrap, huh?" Eleanor muttered, swinging herself onto Cyclone's back without even using a saddle. "All right, Cyclone, let's show these city boys how we handle trespassers on the ranch." Cyclone charged. He wasn't just a horse anymore. He was a force of nature. He hit the first line of guards like a wrecking ball, his sheer weight sending them flying into the shallow water. Teddy was right beside him, nipping at ankles and snatching the guards' radios so they couldn't coordinate. "It's a wipe," Eleanor yelled, dodging a capture net with a slick move. She reached the lead guard, the one holding the remote for the thermal charges. With one swift motion, she snatched it from his hand. "This belongs to the rightful owner now, buddy." She didn't just stop the charges. She used the remote to overload Thorn's own security drones that were still buzzing around. One by one, they started sparking and falling out of the sky like broken toys. "Thorn is bankrupt on ideas now," Eleanor panted, looking at the screen. The live stream had reached 50 million viewers. The CEO was being ratioed by the entire planet. Just then, a new set of headlights appeared at the mouth of the hidden valley. These weren't Thorn's SUVs. They were marked with the Federal Bureau of Land Protection. "Looks like the real law finally decided to show up," Eleanor said, letting out a long breath. A woman in a crisp uniform stepped out, Agent Miller. She looked at the chaos, the steam, the tied-up security guards, and the 80-year-old woman sitting on a black stallion. "Mrs. Eleanor," Agent Miller said, her voice professional, but with a hint of a smile. "We've been monitoring your stream. Marcus Thorn has been flagged for illegal land seizure and corporate espionage. His assets are being frozen as we speak." "About time," Eleanor said, sliding off Cyclone. "But what about my ranch? Thorn's crane is still sitting on my stables." "The Tech Hub decree has been overturned," Miller replied. "The Silver Ranch is now a national heritage site. No one can touch it. Not the Sterlings, not the Thorns, nobody." Eleanor looked at Teddy, who was currently flexing for a news drone that had just arrived. She looked at Cyclone, who was finally chilling and drinking from the waterfall pool. "We did it, Teddy," Eleanor whispered. "It's untouchable." But as Agent Miller walked back to her truck, she dropped a small, mysterious black envelope at Eleanor's feet. "You might want to read that. It's from a private donor who saw your race in the desert. They say the sandstorm sprint was just the qualifier for something much bigger." Eleanor opened the envelope. Inside was a golden ticket to the Midnight Mountain Marathon in the Alps, and at the bottom, a handwritten note. "The horse is the key, but the dog is the target." "Oh, you gotta be kidding me," Eleanor groaned. "When do I get to just rot on the porch and eat my pudding?" Teddy let out a determined bark. The sequel was already loading, with the National Heritage Site status. The black SUVs were gone, replaced by a peaceful silence and the smell of fresh mountain air. Eleanor was sitting on her porch, watching the sunset, but she wasn't relaxing. She was staring at that mysterious black envelope and the golden ticket to the Alps. "The dog is the target?" Eleanor muttered, glancing at Teddy, who was currently busy chasing his own tail. "He's just a dog, right? A go-at dog, sure, but a target?" Suddenly, Jax came running from the stable, looking absolutely shook. He was holding his tablet, and his hands were shaking like he'd had 10 espressos. You gotta see this. I was deep diving into Foreign Global's deleted files, the ones you leaked during the stream, and I found a folder labeled Project Chimera." Eleanor squinted at the screen. It was a scanned document from 15 years ago, with a blurry photo of a puppy that looked exactly like a young Teddy. "They weren't tracking Cyclone because of his muscles, Jax whispered, his voice cracking. "They were tracking him because he was the only horse who could keep up with Teddy. According to these files, Teddy isn't just a stray you found. He's a bioengineered scout dog with a neural link processor that can predict danger before it happens." "You're capping, Jax," Eleanor said, her heart hitting warp speed. "He's a golden retriever. He likes belly rubs and smelly socks." Just then, Teddy stopped chasing his tail. He stood perfectly still, his ears twitching. He let out a low, frequency-shifting growl that sounded almost digital. Whir-rr-rr. A tiny silver nano-drone, the size of a bee, descended from the porch rafters. It was aiming a red laser dot right at Teddy's forehead. "Teddy, evasive!" Eleanor screamed. Before the drone could fire, Teddy did a backflip that would make an Olympic gymnast look like an amateur. He snatched the drone out of midair with his teeth and crunched it into scrap metal. "That was not normal dog behavior," Jax gasped, his eyes wide. "They're coming for him, Jax, and not just Thorn. Whoever sent that golden ticket is part of the Shadow Council that created him," Eleanor said, her face turning into a mask of pure grit. Suddenly, the ranch's perimeter alarms went berserk. A massive, silent stealth jet was hovering directly over the ranch, cloaked in the clouds. 4 figures in shimmering, active camouflage suits rappelled down, landing silently on the grass. They weren't using guns. They were holding sonic nets designed to disable electronics. "They think he's a bot, so they're using an EMP pulse," Eleanor realized. "If they hit him with that, it'll fry his brain." "Not today, sweaties," Eleanor yelled, grabbing a heavy-duty copper wire from the barn. She threw it over the ranch's main power transformer and kicked the switch. KZZZT. A massive surge of electricity ran through the fence, creating a feedback loop that glitched the stealth suits of the intruders. They flickered into view. Men in high-tech armor with a logo that looked like a stylized wolf. "Cyclone, stampede mode!" The stallion burst out of the stable, but he wasn't alone. He was leading the entire herd of rescue horses in a coordinated charge. Teddy took the lead, running between Cyclone's legs, using his predictive AI to tell the horses exactly where to turn to avoid the sonic nets. It was a tactical masterpiece. The intruders were being ratioed by a pack of horses and a dog. One of the agents tried to fire a tranquilizer, but Teddy sprinted up a fallen log, launched into the air, and tackled the man before he could pull the trigger. "The dog is literally cracked," Jax yelled, filming the whole thing for the live stream. The lead agent, a man with a scarred face and a robotic eye, stood his ground. He pulled out a device that emitted a high-pitched, whining sound. Teddy collapsed to the ground, whimpering, his eyes glowing a faint electric blue. "The override code," the agent sneered. "He belongs to the project, Eleanor. You're just a temporary glitch in the system." Eleanor didn't hesitate. She grabbed a bucket of cold well water and yeeted it straight onto the agent's high-tech device. Spark! Pop! The device short-circuited, and the high-pitched sound stopped. Teddy snapped out of it, let out a thunderous bark, and headbutted the agent into the mud. "The only system he belongs to is Team L," Eleanor said, standing over the fallen agent with her shotgun. "Now tell me, who is the wolf?" The agent just laughed, a dark, villainous chuckle. "The Alps, Eleanor. The Midnight Mountain Marathon isn't a race. It's a collection point. Every bioengineer